So I feel like our generation, we are private investigators when it comes to the internet. So even now, what I'll do is if there's a job role that I'm looking for and the recruiter isn't attached to it on LinkedIn Premium, I will literally look up like tech recruiter at Google or whatever I think the hiring manager's title will be. I would look for that and I'll look through their activity and see if they've posted about this job role, if they like somebody's post about this job role, and I'll find who the hiring manager is or someone connected to it who's promoting the role, and I'll reach out to them and just say like, "Hey, I see that you mentioned that your team is hiring. Like, can you get me in contact with the recruiter? This is why I think I'll be good for the role," type thing. So it's a lot about like completely going out of your way and just kind of being not overbearing, but just like doing the most.
Hello and welcome back to Custom Journeys, the podcast that spotlights Black and Latino voices in STEM. My name is Eliseo Iglesias, and I'm here as always with host and founder of the show, Andrew Baines. Please like, watch, and subscribe to the pod on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow the pod on Instagram by searching at Custom Journeys, and that's spelled CUSTEM Journeys. We're really excited to have our next guest today, Rebecca Chavez. She is the product marketing manager at Google. Very cool. And she has a bachelor's of science degree in communication and mass studies from the University of North Florida, as well as a master's of arts degree in art history from George Mason University. She is also a certified Scrum product owner, and we'll talk about what that means in this episode. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks again, Rebecca, for joining us. We're excited to talk to you and learn about your journey through tech. So we always start the episode by asking our guests like what they do currently and what's kind of a day in their life for their current job position. So as a product marketing manager, what does that mean exactly and what's kind of like a day in the life for you?
So I'm new to the role, so I don't have a very great grasp of what my day to day is, but I have worked in marketing for a number of years. So it really just depends on what the company's goals are. But a day in a day would consist of me looking at different campaigns, looking at products, services, figuring out how to market that to our target audiences. So it's a lot of research, looking at a lot of numbers, figuring out how to optimize things, and kind of just looking at like social media promotion, events, web development. I like to look into UX a lot, doing heat mapping, email marketing, just a lot of different things, working with a lot of different groups, whether it's sales, products, tech. Just figuring out how to ultimately drive revenue for companies.
Gotcha. So product marketing, I'm assuming there's a particular product that you're like responsible for. Is that the case? And if so, what product is it?
Yeah, so for Google, I will be responsible for growth in the Grow with Google program.
Oh, okay. So like the certification program, right?
Mhm.
All right, dope. That's cool. You gotta hook us up. We're looking for somebody to actually interview who's like completed that program. I know that's probably not what you're gonna focus on more so. You're probably focused more so on the marketing side of it, but I'd be
Well,
excited to like talk to somebody who's done the program too.
yeah, so part of our team does actually work on getting with those who have completed the certification programs and helping them get into actual jobs. So I know we have like case studies and that type of thing, but I'm sure I could hook you up with someone who's actually gone through the process.
All right, dope. Appreciate that. During Eli's introduction for you, he talked about a bachelor's in communication, right? And then a master's in, was it art history or music
Yeah,
history?
art history.
And you end up at Google, right? So we gotta talk about this journey first before we do anything else. What's kind of the backstory on well, let me start here. What first got you interested in tech?
Yeah, so it's kind of all over the place. I am a first generation American, so I was figuring everything out on my own. I'm from like the hood, so I didn't really have exposure to anyone who went to college or like had really great careers. So I was just, trying to figure out what to do. In high school, I was really obsessed with the movie How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And so it's like this girl who works in a magazine company living in New York. Like, I just thought that was the dream. And I was really into journalism, but I was also like an artist. I was always very artistic. I just didn't want to be a starving artist. I knew I needed to make money. I didn't want to be poor anymore. So I decided to go to school for journalism and then do studio art as my minor, and I would find a way to put those things together. I could work for a company, but I went to college in 2009, so this was at the time where everything was becoming digital, and I recognized that immediately, so I thought, "Okay, I need to pivot." So within our journalism program, my school was relatively small, so they actually grouped PR and advertising together with journalism. So I switched my like track to PR, but I still got to do all of the PR and advertising courses. And then I kept studio art thinking, I can find like a digital way to combine this like corporate American idea of communications, but still be artistic in some type of way. And then I really like museums, so I thought, I did an internship as a marketing assistant at a museum, and I thought, okay, this would be the perfect merge together. And that ultimately drove me to getting my master's in art history. But it was really hard finding jobs in that field that were lucrative. So life kind of steered me closer to tech because my first, like, real big girl job out of college was actually working in a product development team for Merrill Lynch in their back office, and it made me realize that I'm really tech savvy, like, I would do tier 1 tech support and then help with the roadmap, or the projection of their product launches. So I realized I really liked working with systems. I grew up during the age where we started getting into computers. Like, I would watch my
Yeah.
dad literally build websites. I was on MySpace coding, like
Alright, dope.
so, I think just, dabbling in it a little bit made me realize and just the way, like, my life kinda just fell, made me realize that I wanted to get more involved with tech and just being able to see, like, this is where the world is going. If I want to be successful, I need to, jump on the bandwagon.
Quick question, Rebecca. So first generation, did your parents go to college?
No, my parents didn't even finish high school, so my mom was just a caretaker my entire life, and my dad was an auto mechanic, so that also kinda helped me realize I like techie stuff because I would help him a lot with working on cars or just, like, understanding physics and, like, machines and stuff, so
My parents are pretty much similar. My dad didn't finish high school, and my mom was cleaned houses when she first came into this country. So, okay, feel you on that one.
yeah.
Um, Now, going into college, how did you take out student loans? Did you qualify for scholarships to pay for college?
So I'm from Florida, and they have this thing called Fulbright Scholars that you have to get a really high GPA to qualify for, and I didn't make the mark. I was pretty smart, but I'm a C's get degrees type of girl. In high school, I didn't get C's, but I had like a 3.0 average, I think, and I really didn't like going to school, so I missed like 45 days in a semester or something. I don't know. It's something
Hold
weird.
up, bro, what were you doing?
I was just sleeping. I don't
I
know.
I didn't know I didn't know this interview was gonna go this way, but that's great.
I mean, at least it gives people hope, like, I was smart, I'm not gonna lie, I did my work, it didn't take a I didn't have to try very hard to be completely honest, but I did my work, I did enough to get by, I did enough to get the grades that I needed to get into college, but I didn't qualify for certain scholarships, so I had to look for other ones, and honestly didn't think I wanted to go to college, didn't know anyone who went to college, I knew I wouldn't be able to pay for it, I just didn't understand how it would be possible, but then, I'm from Jacksonville, there's a junior college there, and I just thought, well, if I do decide to go, I could just do something like that, but I actually had a counselor who was very much invested in me, and she was the one who really said, like, "You're really smart, you need to go to an actual university, like, you can do this, we can make it happen," and because of her, I started looking at scholarships, I had to interview for one, it was a small scholarship, I think like 2,500 a semester, which would have covered my tuition, and it was put on by a man named Dr. Adam Herbert. He's the first Black president of the University of North Florida and Indiana University. So I did an interview with a panel for that specific scholarship, and one of the people who were interviewing was also the program coordinator for a full scholarship that the city had put together for underserved children in specifically Jacksonville, so as long as you had, like, free or reduced lunch, or if you were one of those type of kids, you could
Mhm,
qualify the scholarship. Obviously, you had to have good grades, there were interviews, but because I was interviewing for this one scholarship, he pulled me into the other one, and I actually ended up getting a full scholarship as long as I went to a college in my hometown. So it paid for everything, not just, like, tuition, I had a meal plan, they covered my dorm, and then I also had, like, a few extra $1,000 per semester to spend on myself. So I
Yo,
definitely lucked up, but it was also because I had the grades for it.
yeah, that's dope. So you from Jacksonville, Duval County, right?
Yeah.
Now I was gonna hop in there with that Duval, cause I mean, I
Yeah,
be
no.
hearing about Duval all the time.
That chant is a bit gentrified now, so I don't do that.
Alright, no,
No,
that's
no,
cool. I'm glad I ain't do it then.
Rebecca, the purpose here is not to throw shade at people that had struggles or didn't have straight A's because, in matter of fact, the norm for most people going to college is having some type of struggle. And so you'd be surprised a lot of people we interview on here have similar struggles and weren't always straight A students, weren't always full time in college. Sometimes they were doing part time work. So no shade thrown at all. That's normal. That's life. But you still can be successful in
No,
STEM despite
definitely.
all of that.
I definitely believe that. I mean, I looked up because I was pretty smart and I didn't have to try that hard, but, I mean, I had a lot of things going on in my life. I had to work while I was in high school, which took my time away from other things that I could have been more focused on. I had friends who had really supportive families who were helping them with their college admission applications, helping them with homework. I didn't have any of that, and because, like, I had a pretty troubled childhood, like, I just mentally wasn't as as focused as I could have been, but
Mhm.
even with all of that going on, like, there's still a way to make yourself successful and still get into school, or I actually don't even believe you have to go to college, but there's definitely always a way.
There's
Alright.
hot take number one, Andrew.
Yeah, nah,
Let's
she jumping
clip
ahead,
it and ship
trying
it.
to yeah. Alright, we're gonna get into that. So at a young age, you said, "Hey, I wanna be" you're really interested in art, but, "Hey, I'm not down for being a broke, starving artist," which is smart,
Yeah.
trying to figure out a way to combine your passion with something lucrative financially. So you end up working at Merrill Lynch initially, right? You said, in doing tech support and things of that nature. What was that experience like, your first introduction to tech? How did you enjoy that experience?
So it was technically a customer service role, which, I've been working in retail through high school, so I was already familiar with dealing with people, but my first role was specifically it was kind of like call center, so or not
Mm,
people, it wasn't like the general public, it was specifically financial advisors for Merrill Lynch would call in and figure out how to use the product that we were launching, how to market it to their clients, like, just whatever questions they had about it, they called in and I would help them. And at first, I was like, "Okay, this is a bit overwhelming. I don't know the system," and the training was kinda weird. I just shadowed someone for a few weeks, and then they kinda just threw me into the fire. Um, so at first it was definitely overwhelming because I had to catch on very quick. It was not anything I had particularly done before. I never used the system, but I'm a really resourceful and like scrappy person. So it was just a matter of like learning everything that I could, becoming a specialist. And I'm a little bit competitive, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit of an overachiever. So I just made sure that I was the best at what I did. I got a few awards for the service that I was providing. It was weird because at first I didn't realize I was in tech, but I was like, "Hold up, why am I learning about, like, server errors and, like, literally walking people through tech support?"
yeah,
And even a few years after leaving that role, I didn't realize, like, that's what I was doing and that's how I should market myself. So now looking back, it's like, "Oh, wow, I worked in product development for, like, 3 years."
gotcha. Alright, so I got one more question about Merrill Lynch. How did you land that job?
Yeah, so one of my friends actually worked there. He went to a neighboring college in Jacksonville as well. He was already working for the team. They wanted to hire a few people, so he automatically got me in. I did really, really good on my interview. One of the things I remember, which I thought was weird, was that they noticed that I completed my degree in 4 years, which I guess was not common, and I was like, I didn't know people paid attention to stuff like that, but in an entry level role, I guess those little things can indicate whether you're a hard worker or not, but
Mm,
they knew by the end of the interview they wanted to hire me, and they let me know.
gotcha. Okay. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit because I feel like from talking to you before we started recording, I feel like you could give like a master class on people that wanna pivot into tech and, vice versa
Yes.
as far as like LinkedIn, so we wanna make sure we have enough
Yeah.
time for that. But so walk me from leaving Merrill Lynch to getting the job as a marketing, lead at Deloitte. How did that process kind of happen?
Yeah, so I stayed with Merrill Lynch for a little over 6 years, so initially, things like networking and doing, like, LinkedIn or anything like that wasn't particularly important to me because I was I thought I was gonna be with this company for a really long time. I did kind of network within the company just because I would talk to people in different groups in order to get my job done. So it helped me, like, kind of leverage my connections to move up. But once I decided I wanted to leave Merrill Lynch and I wanted to focus more on marketing, I really had to figure out, okay, how can I leverage what I have to get my foot in the door? Because I'm a really introverted person. It's really hard for me to step out of my comfort zone. Yeah, I don't like a lot of people actually used to call me a mute. I don't really talk that much. So I had to figure out a way to make myself like stand out, especially when all these robots are just, like, looking through resumes, and it was really hard, like, I probably applied for 200 jobs on LinkedIn at that point and maybe only had, like, 3 interviews,
Wow.
um
Okay.
and because I knew I was pivoting, I knew that I would have to kinda take a step back, and I may not, because Merrill Lynch's finance, I was working in investment banking. I made decent amount of money. I knew that I was gonna have to kinda take a step back and compromise what I wanted in order to make my first pivot. But what I did was really, like, leverage my resources. One, I reframed the way that I positioned myself in the job market. So that's when I really looked back at, what had been my previous jobs, how can I kind of present it in a way that's more relevant to where I want to go? And not only that, how do I leverage other people? Like, are there side projects that I worked on at the time? Like, I'm a part of a sorority, so I have a big network of people who work like in nonprofits or doing a lot of volunteering. So I made sure that it was if there was like any big campaigns that I worked on, I put that in as like an internship role or something that would make it seem like I had the experience, even if it wasn't my specific job. And then I just treated my LinkedIn profile as if it was my resume. I plugged in all the skills that I had that I knew that others people were looking for. I would literally like think of, okay, what job am I applying for? Let me go find people who are either working at this company or similar companies who have this job role and then see what theirs look like. How are they describing their job description? Like, how are they describing their duties, what they've accomplished, what skills do they have plugged into their profile? And then I kind of just mimicked it as long as it was relevant to me, obviously. Like, I'm not just gonna completely lie, but definitely trying to do as much research to figure out what these people want and presenting myself to match that as much as possible. So that meant in my headline, making sure my headline stated the job that I was looking for, creating an about me section that kind of summarized what I was doing. But not only that, if you're making a pivot, you may not have all of the experience they're looking for, but you need to tell a story to them of why you're moving towards that and
Mhm.
what your like transitional skills or transferable skills have to do with that so they don't think like, okay, we're just taking too big of a risk on this person. Then I plug in all my skills on my I feel like that's probably the most important because when recruiters are searching for things, they're essentially looking for buzzwords. They need to make sure that you have these
Mhm.
experiences. So then also having to teach myself a lot of stuff. I taught myself SQL. I went back and refreshed on a little bit of coding just because in marketing operations, some people do use it. So, I would put it in there even though I was like straight beginner, not like anything crazy. Beefing up on certificates that I could get for free, LinkedIn classes, whatever I could to beef up my like profile so that when recruiters were searching for specific skill sets or job titles, my profile would pop up. And then I also made an investment and I would subscribe to LinkedIn Premium. I would pay for it whenever I'm job searching. I definitely subscribe to it specifically because on some of the job profiles, it'll show you the recruiter assigned to it and it'll let you use like in-mail credits to message them directly. So I found that to be like really helpful.
Oh, that's a ton of gems right there. I'm, like,
Yep.
taking mental notes about how to up my game on my LinkedIn
Yes.
profiles.
Same here.
So that actually reminds me. So I feel like our generation, we are private investigators when it comes to the internet. So even now, what I'll do is if there's a job role that I'm looking for and the recruiter isn't attached to it on LinkedIn Premium, I will literally look up like tech recruiter at Google or whatever I think the hiring manager's title will be. I would look for that and I'll look through their activity and see if they've posted about this job role, if they like somebody's post about this job role, and I'll find who the hiring manager is or someone connected to it who's promoting the job role and I'll reach out to them and just say like, "Hey, I see that you mentioned that your team is hiring. Like, can you get me in contact with the recruiter? This is why I think I'll be good for the role," type thing. So it's a lot about like completely going out of your way and just kind of being not overbearing, but just like doing the most.
I got you. Being strategic and proactiveness. So I think you've kind of displayed all of that is really important. Let's talk a little bit more about like some of the certifications and stuff that you pursue. Eli's going to ask you specifically about like the Scrum one, but can you kind of list off some of the different certifications or online courses that people may want to consider taking?
Well, the ones that I have 3 different ones from HubSpot. They're like inbound marketing, the HubSpot software, and social media management, and then I have the certified product owner, that I got because I knew I wanted to be in product marketing.
One thing I'm curious about, Rebecca, and that is your art history background. You mentioned that you do have a creative flair to your personality, to your profession, professional prowess. Talk about that turn when you went to get your art history degree. Very curious about that.
Yeah, so initially when I went to go get it, it was because my very last semester in undergrad, I did a study abroad program in Italy, and it was just like my photography class and like a regular art history class. I really just wanted to go to Italy, but it was a faculty-led program. So the dean of the entire art program at my college went with us, and she had her PhD in art history. And before then, I had never like even thought of it. I didn't know that it was like a thing. I didn't know what you could do with it outside of being like a teacher. So she really kind of opened my eyes to figure out what I could do with it. Because before then I was like, I like doing art. My confidence may not be up there to like pursue that, but art history was definitely an avenue I could take to where I could still be embedded in the art culture, but not necessarily be a practicing artist. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I initially wanted to do marketing for an art museum. If I get my master's in art history, that makes me a lot more knowledgeable about what I'm marketing. And I could also potentially start looking into being a curator. But as I did my art history program, I realized that it didn't really line up with the things that I like to do. A lot of the times, I ended up tailoring the program to what I wanted to do. So I didn't do everything that my cohort did. They would do, like, theses or I don't even know what they did to finish their program, but what I ended up doing was creating a huge project to where I actually created, like, a exhibition for the African American Museum in DC, but I focused more on programming. I wanted to figure out like, okay, why is this important culturally? How can we put it together? And how will the programs surrounding the exhibition actually make an impact on the community or those who it's relevant for? And the feedback I got from that was just like, they were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, they were just so like impressed. But I was like, this is easy. All I did was like, I put together a media kit. Like, I took a marketing approach to it. And so it made me
Right on.
realize, okay, well, maybe I'm not a curator. I definitely enjoy programming and trying to find like the psychological aspect of things and how to get people's buy ins or just helping other people through that frame of thought. So then after I wasted a lot of money on a graduate program.
I I wholeheartedly disagree with that. If
Well,
there's
I will say it was very instrumental in my professional development because one, I learned how to do like real research. An art history
Mhm.
program is all about research and writing. And so I did a lot of that. And it's really helpful working in product marketing because that's what we do now. We do a lot of research. We figure out, how things are impacting people. And one of the really cool things about George Mason is they actually have a partnership with the Smithsonian. So I took a lot of material culture classes at the Smithsonian where I studied things you wouldn't conventionally think are art, like how sugar drove the economy, how art drives the economy, and it's ultimately marketing. Like, so it did
Wow.
definitely help in that aspect.
I think that's wonderful. That's the reason why I was curious because I thought this is maybe, and correct if I'm wrong, this is you pursuing your interest. And it didn't work out, maybe in the end, but it was edifying. It did build up your experience and informed your interests or your career for the future. So, I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that, okay, college may not be for everyone, but ultimately it really doesn't matter in some cases, not if you're like a doctor or a lawyer, but it doesn't really matter necessarily what you get your degree in. Like if you come into a space where you've decided that, okay, what I'm doing is not what I want to do, you can pivot. These courses teach you the foundational learnings you need to have to like get into corporate America, but ultimately a lot of employers aren't just looking for people who have specific skills. They want people who are teachable because every company does things their own way. Yes, you need to be smart. You need to have, like a foundational set of skills, but you can easily present yourself as a teachable person, a hardworking person who fits into their culture and they can teach you what they need you to do from there.
You just gave us the perfect segue, pivoting from art history. First, can you define what Scrum certification is? And number two, why did you ended up pursuing that?
Yeah, so I kept hearing things about Scrum. I'm in a lot of like Latina in tech and Black in tech groups, and I saw a lot of people making a lot of money being like Scrum masters or just doing Scrum and Agile. And then at when I was working at Deloitte, we also started transitioning into working like in Agile pods and implementing the Agile framework in the way that we were working. And I was like, this is so different from what I am used to, like the waterfall methodology. And I was just like, I don't understand why y'all are trying to get me to do these things so fast. And, like, it was foundationally different than what I have known before, so I kinda just took the initiative to figure out more about it. I have a few best friends who are actually recruited for a lot of big tech companies, and so they were telling me if I wanted to pivot as specifically a product marketing manager, that the Scrum certification would be a good idea. But once I actually took the course, I realized it was helpful overall for project management. That's one of the things I lack in. I don't like coordinating people. I'm very much an individual contributor. Like, so I'm self-aware about that. My communication with others on teams aren't where it should be. I don't like being the person to kind of just take notes and keep track of everything. So learning Scrum was extremely helpful in me changing the way I worked to work better with others, to be on top of the projects that I was on. It didn't like being a product owner doesn't particularly like, that's not the role I'm in. I'm not looking to be a product owner, but the ideologies of Scrum itself, I think everyone needs to know them because you can use it in real like, your regular life, you can use it at work, literally with anything. You can apply, like, the principles and how to organize things to it.
Where did you get certified for Scrum?
I honestly don't remember the actual name of the company, but I went onto the Scrum Alliance website and looked for courses that were available on the days that I wanted to do it, and I just looked through reviews of who the teachers were, and I picked one that like, resonated with, who I felt that I would actually pay attention to. So I just went through their website, I picked one, and I got my job to pay for it.
You may not have ended up being a curator, but you sure are doing a great job curating your own education.
Thanks. Yeah.
And on that note, Andrew, take it away.
All right, Rebecca, this is going to be the first time we try this, but this segment is going to be factor cap. So essentially, true or false. I don't need to explain it to you. You're from the culture. I'm pretty sure there's somebody I'll need to explain it to. But anyway, so I'm going to ask you a few questions and try to make it as rapid fire as you can. So 60 seconds or less, try to answer each question. Number one, answer factor cap. And then if you want to give a brief explanation, you can just limit it to 60 seconds or less. All right.
Okay. Alright.
Cool. All right. So the first question, this one's actually one of the bigger questions that we typically ask our guests. So according to glassdoor.com, if I look at the salary for a product marketing manager in New York, it's roughly $125,000. Fact or cap?
Cap.
You want to explain more or less? You don't have to give the exact number if you want to, but I'm just
Um
saying.
I mean, yeah, I don't know the exact number, I can't speak for other people, but websites like those aren't necessarily accurate because it's just people volunteering information, so you're not getting, like, a good sample of everyone's salaries, and then there's just a lot of things that go into it, whether it's years of experience or just inflation, like, right now is a crazy job market, so things are changing rapidly, so I just would not rely on those numbers.
All right, number 2, you need to be good at math in order to get into tech.
I am good at math, but I'm gonna say cap. I know there's jobs where you don't need to know math. In marketing, it's really good to be data centric, so you need to know how to work with numbers, at least if you want to work in growth. But at least from what I know, there's definitely roles where you don't deal with math or need to be good at it, and also, like, we have the internet and calculators.
All right, dope. I can live with that. All right, number 3, college should be free.
I'll say fact.
Okay. Everything with this one is a little relative. So college degrees, the price of them vary depending on where you go, but a college degree is worth the money.
Cap.
Cap. All right. Why do you say that one? And what would you, I guess, recommend as an alternative, I guess?
I can go into length about how I believe in specifically for black and brown people, we need to have our own communities where we fill in the gaps labor-wise. So not everyone needs to be a doctor, not everyone needs a lawyer, not even everybody needs to be in tech. We need our own electricians, we need our own plumbers, like, we need all of these other professions to be filled within our own community. So I don't think that everyone needs a college degree. Also, college degrees, I mean, even if you were working in tech, I know people who never got their degrees and they made six figures at 22 years old. Certificates are a way to bypass that. So it's just a lot of different things we can do. You can make six figures without having a degree. I think degrees are really just the way of corporate America ensuring that they mold people to act the way that they want us to act to build like these foundational skills, but they're not necessary to be successful.
All right. Last one. Factor cap. It's not what you know, but who you know that matters.
I'm gonna
So,
say fact just because one thing I learned working in corporate America, anyone can have a set of skills, anyone can learn how to do whatever, but a lot of times you get jobs because of either who you're reaching out to, the connections you have, or just the impressions you're leaving on people. Especially now, if we all have tech schools, how do these companies differentiate us? With my Google interview, I felt they were really more emphasizing to figure out if I had like a good personality and if I was a good culture fit.
awesome. Amazing job. Hey, one question I was debating out. So that's it for Factor Cap. You did awesome, by the way. One question I was going to ask you, you mentioned that you're in a sorority. What sorority are you in? And has that helped you at all throughout your career?
Yes, so I am in Delta Sigma Theta, Sorority Incorporated, and they were extremely instrumental in building me up as a person. Not only did they help me understand how to like be a good sister or just be a good person to others, but they helped me be like a professional. They helped me with my confidence. They helped me with my public speaking. They helped me with like just being able to work with others. But then also they always been that community that I feel you need in order to really succeed because they were always examples of what were possible for me. They were always in positions to provide resources that I need. They were just really instrumental in being a support system or just I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but yes, like I know people say like it's just paying for friends, but on a professional note, it was extremely important for me to be a part of this organization.
So, did you join the sorority during college and undergrad? And if so, what year?
Yeah, so I joined my second year in college, so as soon as I was eligible, I definitely joined.
Awesome. No, that's interesting because I find that a lot of people from our communities that go to college often need a support structure in order to retain, in order to stay and push through it. And because they need a little bit semblance of community that they're lacking from, from leaving college or moving away from home.
And I initially joined because I wanted that, like, I wanted to have that sense of community because I'm a first generation American. My siblings are the only ones in the United States out of my family. I never had like cousins that I could
Mm.
be around. So I wanted that sense of community. But the process that I went through ended up, like, fundamentally changing the way that I was in a very positive way. Like, my first 2 years of college, I could not manage 4 classes a semester, which is supposed to be normal, but I was overwhelmed, it was too much for me, and they instilled skills in me that were necessary for me to excel in life.
Here's my hot take. It's normal if you live in the right neighborhoods and went to the right schools, right?
Right, because those things are instilled in them in their regular familial environments, I wasn't privy to that, so I had to learn it elsewhere, and I felt that my sorority was, like, very, very instrumental in doing that for me, not just with giving me the skills, but giving me the support that I needed and, like, showing me the way, showing me what was possible, because otherwise I feel like you can't succeed if you don't know that if you're not exposed to it, if you don't even know that it's out there, you're not thinking of it, you're not working towards it.
Exactly.
100%. Now, moving forward, are there any other professional organizations or conferences that you've been involved in throughout your careers thus far?
There have been a few, not that I've been, like, heavily involved in. Throughout the years, I definitely tried to join as much, like, ERG groups or other organizations, like the Urban League in DC. Their, like, young professionals group was very, like, well known, so I would volunteer with them sometimes. And then through work, I'm usually, like, in the Latino groups and the Black groups. At Deloitte, I was a part of one called Alpha, which was, something that they sponsored for me for Latinos. So I definitely believe in being a part of those groups, but I'm not as involved in them as I should be.
Real quick, can you define ERG real quick?
So employee resource groups, so they usually have groups defined by whatever, like, intersection you're in.
So next question, throughout your career, have you had any experience with salary negotiations?
Yes. When I first started my career, it was really interesting because I'm gonna say that, being Latina means that we're kind of socialized to feel content with where we've gotten to. It's like,
Mm.
well, you should be happy that, like, you're to this point, like, this wouldn't have been possible for, like, your parents, so, like, you should just be content with where you're at, and so that did, and even being a woman, we get the same type of socialization, so I felt that I didn't really know my worth initially, and I didn't have the confidence to fight for it. So, working at Merrill Lynch, I was working with a lot of, like, my actual real life friends. So, we had those relationships where we could openly talk about how much we were getting paid, and I did notice that people who had the same degree as me, the same years of experience, we had the same, like, expertise. Because they were men, they were getting much more than me in promotions, and so that kind of pushed me to speak up. So, initially in my career, I tried to do salary negotiations and was always just kind of, like, on honestly. But later on in my career, I joined a few different, like, Black women in tech groups. I'll shout them out specifically because I feel like they were the most instrumental in helping me with this, because they would openly talk about salary negotiations, how much they're making, like, what's possible, how to actually negotiate it, and because of that, in a lot of my most recent roles, like, I always negotiate. I don't care if I don't feel like, even if I feel happy with what they're giving me, I know that that's not the most that they can give me. So regardless, I negotiate now, and I've also helped my friends negotiate as well.
What piece of advice would you give for others who are struggling with salary negotiations?
For me, I take a very structured approach to it. I'm not just gonna ask for money and just, like, leave it at that. Like, I'm all about creating an argument and making your case. I mean, obviously, like, I know my worth. I don't feel like I need to explain myself, but they need a reason to give you that money apparently. So, my best advice is, like, doing the research. The numbers you see online might not be the most accurate, but you can use them as fuel to figure out, like, how much you think you should be making. But then I feel like the biggest argument that I've been able to make when I'm negotiating is I'm letting them know how much equity I'm leaving on the table when I switch jobs. So I'll say, if I come onto your team or your company, I'm leaving this behind. Like, I have to pay back my sign-on bonus. I'm like, the difference in your 401k matching is X amount. This is how much I'll be leaving behind. I'll be paying X amount more in my medical benefits. Like, I'll literally drill it down, bullet point it for them, and I'll come up with a number. So I really feel like making that case for yourself makes it really hard for them to decline.
So what was your salary during your time at Merrill Lynch, and then also when you moved to Deloitte as a marketing manager?
So with Merrill Lynch, I was with them for 6 years, and I had, like, 4 or 5 promotions, I can't even remember. I do remember that I started off at, like, 16 something an hour, which is, like, nothing. I think it was, like, 38,000 a year, something like that, and then I had a few promotions before I moved to DC. When I moved to DC, I joined a team that allowed for commissioning, so by the time I left Merrill, I think I was at around, like, 60 something thousand. once I left them and actually got into tech, my first jump wasn't a big increase, it was just a few thousand, but I left them after 3 months because I got a job at a company called Inhisa, which is a legal compliance firm, but it was a marketing operations job, and that gave me a 20% increase in income. I was with them for a year and a half, and then I left them for Deloitte for a 30% increase, so that's when I hit 6 figures, and then with Google, I've pretty much more than doubled my income.
Nice.
I have a random follow-up. I think this is a good question to ask. Since you're moving between jobs, um, what retirement strategy are you implementing or are you thinking about implementing as you're moving on through job to job?
Yeah, I'm really bad about retirement. I
No,
started I started off my 401k when I was with Merrill Lynch. I mean, I was working on investment banking, like, I was literally telling my clients what to do and what to invest in, so that actually helped me really understand the importance of it. So I definitely started off my 401k and I contribute, like, 3 to 4%. That's you should be doing the max. I'm gonna do that moving forward, but I started off just doing a few percent of my paycheck and then keeping it invested, but then I personally do not keep liquid cash. I invest all of my cash that I have so that not only do I have retirement accounts, but I also have, like, taxable accounts that I'm investing and getting residual income from as well. So that's, like, my fallback plan.
I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and I saw that you have like a contract gig, right, as a program
Yeah.
operations manager. Can you talk a little bit about that role, how you landed it, number one, and what advice would you give for others who are hoping to land similar contract positions?
Yeah, so once I finished grad school, I realized I liked working all the time, like, I needed to be busy all the time. So I was like, "Okay, I'll just pick up, like, contract roles," especially in DC specifically, everyone has, like, 2 jobs, contract jobs, like, it's just the norm, so I was like, "Okay, let me try it." What I did was on LinkedIn, I put that I was open to work, but I chose the specific, like, parameters to where I was open to contract or non-permanent work and part-time. And because my LinkedIn profile was pretty optimized, I had a lot of people reaching out to me. It's not always on point, like, I always get full-time roles, recruiters talking to me about full-time roles, which I'm not open to, even though I didn't put that I'm open to, but I actually had a recruiter reach out to me from a recruiting agency for HubSpot specifically, doing program operations management. I'm pretty sure it's because I had in my profile, I've mentioned using HubSpot. I have 3 certificates with them, so making sure that my profile matches that type of thing, and they kinda just found their way to me. And, some people don't really believe in transparency, but for me, I wanna make sure my time commitment is going to actually work. So I practice being, open and transparent with them and saying like, "Hey, I have a full-time role. I have no intentions of leaving it. Like, would they be okay? Even if you're talking to me about a full-time role, are they actually okay with me being with another company as my number one priority? Like, are they open to part-time?" Sometimes recruiters are looking for full-time role, but they have flexibility or they have something else lined up with a different company, especially when they work at those recruiting agencies. So it was just a matter of like making sure my profile was optimized and recruiters just reach out to me for roles.
Okay, awesome. So since you mentioned your LinkedIn profile was optimized, what are some of the best practices for optimizing your LinkedIn profile? And I know we kind of already talked about some of it earlier, but are there any other tips?
Yeah, definitely making sure that you have a strong headline. A lot of people put in things other than their actual job title there. Like, I believe you guys probably found my LinkedIn because I had like Latina in tech as a hashtag on my headline.
Exactly.
So that's a good way to have people find you. I have a not too lengthy about me, but I tell my story in my about me so people fully understand like what I'm working on, what my specialties are, and then get a better idea of who I am. And then the skill section, put in all those skills. It could be like look at job postings and see what skills they're looking for because sometimes it's things you wouldn't really think of. For marketing specifically, they'll put like marketing strategy or communicate something as easy as communication. They're trying to ensure that these people have these skills. So just make sure you also put in like buzzwords or words that are heavily used and looked for in your skills section.
wow, this is I'm definitely learning a thing or two, Andrew, right now. But now for people that are struggling to do just that, to expose themselves a little bit more on LinkedIn or to try to switch jobs or do that pivot, what advice would you give those people in order to have a successful career?
I mean, I think for me, the most important thing is about building a community or joining a community, because life is really about networking. It's kind of sucks because I'm introverted, but it's just how the way it works. These recruiters are looking through a million profiles a day, a million resumes. So it's just a matter of not necessarily making yourself stand out. Sometimes it's just being able to get in front of their face. So go on Facebook, look up groups that are relevant to the industries that you're working in, the type of skills that you're trying to gain, and, join the group, be active, talk to people in roles that you want to go into, ask for advice, go to conferences, get your jobs to pay for conferences. One of the big things that I did was start going to all of the Afrotech events. So I met a lot of recruiters from big tech companies through that, and it's kind of like real life. Build relationships with people, like, stay in contact with them. When you reach out to them, don't just say like, "Hey, can you refer me to a job?" Like, no, say like, a lot of times people cold message me on LinkedIn and I know they want a referral. And if they're a Black or Latina person, I'm more than willing to, but it's weird when you just reach out and say like, "Hey, can I get a referral?" I definitely prioritize only responding to people who actively reach out and say like, "Hey, I noticed that we have similar backgrounds or similar interests. You're in a position that I want to be in or what I'm working towards. Do you mind if like we do a coffee chat so I can get more information about like how you got to where you are?" And 10 times out of 10, if you do that, at the end of the conversation, I'm gonna say, "If you're interested in my company, let me know. Find a position. I have no problem referring you as long as I've actually spoken to you and know that, like, it's not gonna be a waste of my time."
That's awesome. I love that advice, because it's so easy. I think all of us on this call kind of identify as introverted somewhat, which is crazy that we're on a podcast talking about our careers and our life and stuff. But at the same time, you got to really be willing to break out of your shell. Because, I mean, we've talked about it before on this podcast. Closed mouths don't get fed. Nobody's going to come to your door with opportunity. You got to go out there and seek it. So thanks for pointing all of that stuff out. You dropped like a ton of gems in this episode. Like, it's going to be hard to just pick like one thing to, like, kinda hang your hat on. But one of the questions that we try to ask our guests at the end of the show is to give, like, one resource or one piece of advice that you would give to the audience in terms of how to be successful. And just in for this question, think of, like, what's been most beneficial to you, whether it was, like, a certain scholarship, a certification, a conference, or just a piece of advice you've gotten. What is one resource that has helped you be successful that you wanna share with others?
I think because I have my creative background, I really believe in highlighting yourself as an individual. One of the weird things that I've noticed through my career progression is that I have my own website that I built just to showcase like the art that I work on, my photography, my digital illustration, but then I also have like some marketing stuff in it. And I always include it in my resumes. And in every interview that I've been in, I've had someone say like, "Oh my god, I looked at your photography. It's so cool," or "I saw your drawings." Like, I truly believe that we're humans. We can teach ourselves to do anything. Like our minds, our muscles, we can learn the skills, but these companies are looking for people that they can work with because you're going to spend most of your time with them. And so it's not always about the technicality of things. Show who you are. If you're different, show that. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Find ways to stand out outside of just technical skills, but as an interesting person, I guess I would say.
Cool, I like that.
All right, Rebecca. Well, believe it or not, we've been talking for almost an hour now. And for the sake of time, we like to close things with another tough big picture question. There's actually two or three big picture questions I'd like to ask you. I think what you brought up about corporate America is really interesting, and maybe another episode we can dive into that. But the last question we want to leave this episode with has to do your perspective. So this question I find that it's not asked enough from people that look like us and talk like us. And so we'd like to take this opportunity to get your perspective from the guest about how to address the inequities in STEM. And so pretty much the question is, how can we get more people of color uh, into STEM careers or tech careers? I'm including tech in that STEM category. And this can be a big policy change, federal level, state level, or local level. It could be a resource people can take advantage of. Whatever's most important in your mind. We'd like to just know from your perspective, how can we address those inequities in STEM?
So I feel like there's like so many different ways we can do it, but my from my personal experience, I would never rely on the government or policy. I just don't like they're never going to work for us. And so my personal stance is infiltrating the system, playing the game, and then reaching back to the communities. We can only bridge the gap I believe we should start with exposure. If our communities don't know that things are possible, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to work towards it. So for me, I think it's all about creating awareness for those of us who have taken those steps and figured it out, making sure that we're extending that knowledge back to others to get them through, continuing to be resources for them. Because I just don't think we can depend on structures. We just have to do it as people.
We gotta do it ourselves.
I mean, we did it, so
Really?
All right. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us and sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it. It's a powerful story. I hope many people learn from it and get something good out of it. Is there anything that you want to promote? What last lingering thoughts you want to shout out before we close out the episode today?
No, I don't have anything to promote. I just hope that my experience is a really big showcase that it doesn't matter where you're starting at, you can pivot into tech, you could be successful in this industry. You just, have to have the initiative, and even if you don't have the resources, there's a way to make it happen.
Hey, shout out your art website real quick. How can people find your art and stuff?
It's, canvasart.com, so cavezart.com.
All right, dope.
On that note, thank you, Rebecca, again for coming on the show. And thank you for everybody listening for coming on the show and listening to our episode today. For Custom Journeys, I'm Eliseo. He is Andrew Baines, and we are out of here.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.